Was Nolan drinking? Did he get stuck in a rip current? Or did something criminal happen on that fatal trip? Until the investigation is completed, it's hard to come to any conclusion.
This is the exact moment a supposedly clean, cut story about a tragic accident started to rot from the inside out. When an 18-year-old star athlete goes missing on a holiday weekend, you expect panic, you expect frantic searches, and you expect his friends to be tearing the world apart trying to find him. You do not expect those friends to quietly sail back to the mainland, head home, and go to sleep while his car keys sit on top of a video game console in a locked room. And that is where the narrative we were sold begins to completely crumble. July 4th, 26, Horn Island, Mississippi. Nolan Wells was 18. He was a powerhouse on the field, a phenomenal swimmer, kind of kid who had a future so bright it practically hurt to look at it. But by the time his body was pulled from the water near the island's northwest tip 2 days later, the holiday celebration had dissolved into a dark, volatile death investigation. From day one, the official whispers were simple. They said Nolan chose to stay on the island. They said he wanted to hang back with a girl he just met, that he voluntarily let his friends sail away without him. It was a tragic, accidental drowning. Case closed, nothing to see here, move along. But Nolan's family is not moving along, and when you look at the cold, hard timeline of those 48 hours, you realize they would have to be insane to accept that story. The first major crack in the foundation of this case is something so basic, yet so incredibly damning. It is a cell phone. Now, think about this. You are 18 years old. You are on a barrier island miles off the coast of Mississippi. If you decide to stay behind on that island voluntarily, what is the one thing you absolutely do not part with? Your phone. It is your lifeline. It is how you coordinate a ride back, how you check the time, how you call for help if the tide turns. Yet Nolan's friends returned to the mainland with his phone. His family, desperate and frantic after not hearing from him,
My sister and I actually went through Nolan's cell phone, and when we opened it up, there was nothing. There were no saved pictures. There were no snaps from that day.
And that brings us to the first major confrontation, a moment that tells you everything you need to know about the people Nolan was with that day. Imagine being Elmore Wells, Nolan's father. Your son is missing. The sun has gone down and you have no idea where he is. You manage to track his phone's location using a tracking app, and it leads you not to the island and not to a police station, but to a private home on land. Let that sink in. The friends did not call the parents to hand over the phone. They did not leave it with authorities. They took it to a house. When Elmore Wells arrived at that house, the atmosphere was already boiling. Tension was thick in the air. A group of Nolan's young friends were gathered at the door yelling, demanding answers, ready to tear the place apart. Elmore, a father drowning in the worst kind of fear imaginable, had to force himself to be the calmest man in the room. He had to look these kids in the eye and say, please, just calm down. Do not do this to me right now. I need them to trust me so they can give me something.
When we got to the house, a few of his friends, they were already there. And they were at the door in the house asking questions. So when I walked up, they were getting, things were getting kind of tense. So I turned to them and told them, I need you guys to calm down. I don't do this to me right now. I need them to kind of trust me so they can give me something. So
he walked up to the door. A young man came out of a room looking half asleep, acting as if this were just another minor inconvenience on a Sunday morning. Elmore looked at him and said, look, I am Nolan's father. I am here to get his keys so I can get his car. Because Nolan's car was parked back.
I think Jack's or whatever. And I said, look, I'm Nolan's father. I'm here to get his keys so I can get his car. I said, he's like,
his car was in the yard.
His car was parked in the yard. So he was like, I don't know, man. Nolan's like my brother. I said, well, if Nolan was like your brother, would you please go in your room and see if you can find my son's keys so I can take his car home? He walks off, 2 or 3 minutes, come back. I can't find the keys. I said, okay.
The young man walked off. 2 minutes passed, 3 minutes. He came back, looked Nolan's father dead in the eye, and said, I can't find the keys. Think about the sheer weight of that moment. A father is standing on a porch pleading for his missing.
These people's houses because they'd never be a hold in the situation. So walk outside by the car. One of the guys that was in the house with us, he was on the phone with a girl, and the girl told him that Nolan's keys were on top of this Jack's guy's Xbox in the house because apparently she was there with him earlier. So he goes back up to the door by himself, and 5 minutes later.
When you start lying about the small things, like car keys on an Xbox, you lose the right to be believed about the big things. Why lie about the keys? What was the point of keeping a missing boy's car keys and his phone inside a house while his parents were begging for answers? It makes absolutely no sense, unless the phone and the keys were treated as an afterthought because something much more serious had already occurred. Now, let's look at the conflicting stories, because this is where the web of contradictions becomes a tangled, ugly mess. We have two completely different versions of how Nolan ended up alone on Horn Island, and they cannot both be true. On one side, you have a young woman who was on the island that day. According to the family, she states that Nolan told her he was heading back to the mainland on the boat with his friends. He was leaving. But on the other side, the boys on the boat claim the exact opposite. They say Nolan told them he was staying behind on the island, specifically to talk to that young woman.
Jared, you have where a young woman he was talking to says that, well, Nolan said he was going back to get on the boat with the boys. The boys say that Nolan told them he was going to stay and talk to the young woman. It's a contradiction. They're not saying the same thing.
It is a head-on collision of testimonies. One of them is telling the truth and one of them is protecting a massive secret. If Nolan told the girl he was leaving with the boys, and the boys told everyone Nolan was staying with the girl, then who actually decided that Nolan Wells was going to be left behind on that beach? To make matters worse, a video started circulating wild across the internet, a grainy, distant video from the island where you can hear aggressive shouting, a heated altercation breaking out near the shoreline. People immediately started pointing fingers, wondering if this was the final moment of Nolan.
Tell you about that because he actually went up to the door to get the key, because at that point I was just not in my right mind. This has just been an awful situation, just terrible.
It is completely unacceptable, and that brings us to the core issue that has set this entire community on fire. The family has hired prominent civil rights attorney Ben Crump to head up their own independent investigation, and the message from Crump and the local leaders is loud, clear, and incredibly uncomfortable for local law enforcement. At a powerful press conference, representatives of the family laid out the stark reality of how this case has been handled from the very beginning. They pointed out that within a single week,
what we've been told does not make sense. And being that there is lack of confidence in the local authorities, who have already, in my judgment, seemed to have mishandled where it was going. Because to just immediately, before a week time, saying there was nothing done wrong, when we hear that this young man was engaged in some kind of argument that was on tape, that his cell phone and keys ended up with one of the people that were there on the island and got away. He was one black with three young white men who happened to end up with his phone, happened to end up with his keys. Then there's
Reverend Al Sharpton spoke directly to the cameras, and he did not hold back. He looked at the room and said it cannot be lost on anybody, but especially us in the black community. If the roles were reversed, and you had three young black men on a boat with a young white man, and that young white man ended up dead, what kind of investigation would be conducted by Mississippi law enforcement? How many times would those three young black men be interrogated?
That you have done a full, complete, thorough, impartial investigation, because it cannot be lost on anybody, but especially us in the black community. If the roles were reversed and you had three young black men on a boat with a young white man, and that young white man ended up dead, what kind of investigation would be being conducted by the Mississippi law enforcement officials? How many times would those three young black men be interrogated? So all we're asking is the same consideration you would have given if the roles were reversed. Give that consideration to this family as well. That is our fight.
If the skin colors on that boat were reversed, those boys wouldn't be sleeping in their own beds tonight. They'd be answering questions under a hot light. That is the bitter truth that is driving this fight. The family isn't asking for special treatment. They are asking for equal intensity. They want the same aggressive, relentless search for the truth that would be guaranteed to any other family in America. They do not want the path of least resistance. They do not want a hasty rubber stamp of accidental drowning, just so the local departments can avoid a complicated, high-profile scandal. But finally, we are seeing a massive step toward real transparency. Just today, the district attorney met face to face with Nolan's family and Ben Crump. It was a tense, highly anticipated meeting.
There will be a grand jury that she will turn this case over to once they have collected all the information and finished their investigation. We also agreed that we will have a mutual inspection of the cell phone with our experts and their experts, so everybody will be able to see at the same time what the cell phone has.